Welcome everyone to the Row by Row Garden Show, the best dadgum gardening show on the internet. And we got Miss Jennifer with us today. Miss Jennifer is Fancy Girl Farms, aka Jennifer, from the big city of Hayhire, Georgia. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me back. Pleasure.
Yeah, we're talking flowers today. We're getting some insights from a flower farmer. How about that?
That's right.
Everybody enjoys growing flowers as well as I do. But it can be kind of complicated. It can be overwhelming sometimes. But our goal is to make it simple for you, make it be successful for you to grow flowers in your vegetable garden or just in your flower garden. Mm-hmm. So in my vegetable garden, man, we rocking in this fall, but we've had a lot of rain.
Yes. Yes, it has put, I think all farmers are behind. We are behind on getting our fields prepped for our fall planting because the ground is too saturated to get the tractor in.
Yeah, I talked to somebody yesterday and they said the animals were lining up 2 by 2.
Yes.
So we've had one of the wettest years. I'm gonna say summer going into the fall as I can remember. I'm way behind on getting a lot of my stuff done as well. But you know, it's time to be thinking about getting some mustards, turnips, and things like that into the ground. I hadn't done it, but just as soon as I have that opportunity, I'm going to direct seed me some mustard and turnips and things like that. I normally shoot for around the 1st of October, but I think as soon as the weather allows, I'm going to get there and get it done.
And we're fortunate being in the South that we have wiggle room. So I always like to have a little, we've got that little bit of wiggle room. We do. Because it's going to stay a little warmer, and if we do get a cool snap, it seems to warm back up pretty quickly. So yeah. I always feel like this fall transition, we get a little bit of wiggle room in there.
We can go from cool in the morning to hot in the afternoon in a hurry.
Yes.
In cover crops, winter cover crops, it's soon to be time to be thinking about those. The ideal time for Zone 8, which is where we at, for cool weather cover crops, is October 1st to 15th. That is a great window right there. And I tell you the reason that is a great window, and this is one thing you people in other zones may look at. Look at your lawn, and when those winter weeds start appearing, that is when you need to be planting those winter cool season cover crops. That's an ideal time to tell when you need to get them in the ground. And for here, it's October 1st through 15th. We have wiggle room, as you say, above and beyond that. But if you're going to hit it nail on the head, you want to hit it within those 15 days.
And what's your favorite cover crop to put in right now?
Clovers. My clovers are always been my favorite. We do a lot of other things, but clovers to me, because I just love clover. I love to see the bees working them in the fall.
I did red clover last year, and I did white, but the white didn't do as well for me.
You did a white Dutch?
I can't remember now.
There's a white Dutch that we sell. The white Dutch is a lot more heat tolerant, and it lasts a lot longer. And I tell people, if you got a plot that's going to lay up there to the end of May, that you need something to stretch out, you want to go with that white, because it doesn't produce as well as early on as those crimsons and some of those others. They do better early season.
Isn't the white good for the bee? I mean, because that's why I looked at the white, because we do have beehives on our property. So I was trying to make sure that I had a fall cover crop in that would help with the help with our pollinators through the winter.
It will, and it's a lot more heat tolerant. So it'll take the heat a lot more than the crimsons will.
Okay.
The crimson
I did the red, and of course I always do hairy fetch, crimson, and then a winter rye. I usually just do a mix.
The winter rye hairy vetch mix is what I recommend a lot. That is great mix.
That's my go-to. Yep. That's my go-to mix.
That's a great mix right there to do. I always recommend that. If you don't know what to do, and this is your first year planting cool season crops, mix that rye with hairy vetch, and I guarantee you, you'll be blown away with the results.
You'll be pleased.
Yep.
You'll be pleased.
All right, and let's talk about, just for a minute, what have you got going on in the flower farm right now?
We are busy gearing up for our hardy annual planting. So hardy annuals are those flowers that we plant in the fall that winter over, and they're the first to bloom in the spring. And so right now we are sowing seeds. We are trying to get our fields prepped because, like you said, we've got to get cover crops that are in the ground now turned under so they have time to decompose. That's also, we tried to do our soil samples to get those pulled, but everything's just been so wet. So right now it's always a lot of seed sowing for our hardy annuals, because we try to get those transplants in the ground by mid-October, because our typical first frost date is around November 15th. So we try to get, 4 to 6 weeks in the ground so they develop a good root system in the ground before it gets cold. And then we're trying to, like I said, we're trying to get our beds prepped and ready for that now. We're trying to just get things cleaned up, tidied up around the farm. Tunnels are built, pulling out, making sure we've got frost cloths ready to go and all those good things for winter.
What is your go-to cool flowers? What's the ones that you would recommend, the ones you really count on?
For the home gardeners, definitely the snapdragons, because they have good germination. They're fairly easy to start from seed. They winter over beautifully. They take frost really well. They're not fussy. So that's my go-to. Sweet William is another that's really good. I've got a list of about 25 that we're doing. But sweet peas.
Yep.
I heard you don't see a lot of people grow sweet peas in South Georgia, but I did last year. I did a trial patch where we started them in the we started the seed in the greenhouse. In the cool. We have a cool room. We have a cooler, and we put the temperature at about 68, so it's a cool ambient air. And we've got our heat mat, and we started our sweet peas. We planted them out in late October. They do require frost protection from frost, but they were beautiful. Now, granted, when they come on in the spring, they come on, and when the heat picks up, they're gone.
Right.
So they don't have a lot of long bloom time, but they smelled so good, and people were just amazed. Like, you can grow sweet peas.
Oh yeah.
You can grow them. They're just a little fussy, but the rewards are amazing.
So your snapdragons, we've got snapdragons that we planted in our trays in the greenhouse. I know there's a trick to this, but how do you get one seed down? Those are the smallest seeds.
So we've got like a little toothpick.
Yeah.
And we do that. But I tell you,
the
first tray is always really nice, and the second tray is okay. But when we get to the third and fourth tray, at that point you're like, and then you just go, well, I'll just thin them when they're done. Because it's like dust.
It is.
They are like dust.
Yeah, we got a few of them planted, and I didn't realize how thick they were planted. I carried the girls from the office out there, and that was probably my mistake. I should have stayed on them a little bit more than what I did, but they got a little carried away with their plant. They planted a little too thick.
Well,
but we'll have a meeting about that.
Yeah, it's easy. Trust me. Any of those really tiny seeds, it's like the first tray is pretty good, but when you're when we're doing 3 or 4 trays of them, you start sprinkling maybe.
Right.
You think I'll just thin them later.
Yeah, that's what we're doing now. So I go out there and I take 1 tray a day and I thin them out, and I go back the next day so it doesn't get too big of a job, but I try to keep them thinned out. I'm like you, I love snapdragons, especially in the fall of the year.
So we got snapdragons, like I said, sweet peas and Sweet William. We're doing some new ones this year, saponaria and feverfew. So those are some new flowers that we're trying this year. Straw flowers are really easy. And they winter over beautifully for us in Zone 8B. Most things do require just a little bit of frost protection, but you're not having to, get the thick blankets and things like that. And really, when it just drops below that 32, even then they can take a little bit. It's usually the extended hours of being, 32 degrees. They can take a cool little drop and then right back up.
Yep.
So I'm usually always watching like hour by hour.
Yeah, you're the one that stays up and watches, or you on your phone watching the weather every day.
I've got like 3 weather apps, and I'm looking at, hour by hour, what's the wind? There's a wind. As my grandpa always told me, as long as there's a breeze, the frost won't land.
Absolutely.
So when you've got to pull out row cover, you're watching everything.
So we got a new variety that we got that we just got in stock called Binary Giant Yellow Zinnia. And I have not planted this one yet, so I'm thinking about planting some. Do you think I got time to pull off zinnias now, or is it too late?
They're about a 90, I've seen yours says 75 days to maturity.
Well, it's according to heat units.
Yeah, so
it's going to be close.
It's going to be cutting it really close. Now,
I may try.
You could try, and then honestly, if it got to where it was getting cool, you could cover them. Yeah. You could do some, you could certainly cover them, and they would go right on through.
Yeah, but you have experience with this particular zinnia right here.
Yes, I grew the Binary Giant Yellow this summer, and I loved it. It was one of my top producing flowers, it mixed in beautifully with my arrangements, and especially if you don't have a lot of sunflowers, or I didn't grow enough sunflowers. That yellow pop, it's just that pop, especially when you have like the red or the pinks and the greens and the blues, and then you got that bright yellow.
Yeah.
And the heads were nice, big, 4-inch heads. It was my favorite this year to grow.
Really, we're really excited to have this giant yellow zinnia, and I could just see having a big bed just planted in these. He'd make quite a.
I know. I wish I still had some I could roll, but
yeah. So one other thing we want to do is we want you to try to give us a quick lesson on flower arrangements.
Okay, so I will say I'm not a pro.
Okay.
This is all just.
But I will guarantee you're a lot better than what I am.
So, and I typically don't, in my market, I do market bouquets, so I don't do a lot of vase arrangements because I'm really not a floral designer. That's a skill set that
it's all its own.
It's all its own, and God bless those that do it because they're beautiful. I don't have the patience, I think, or I just overthink it.
Right.
Whereas market bouquets, I just, you spin them and add them and spin them and add them, and then it just makes into this really pretty bouquet. And those are my favorite because they're just free form. They're not so stiff looking. They're just wildflower.
So we got some zinnias here. We got some California giant here. If you'll hand me that vase and we'll move it over here. And we're going to do a vase of zinnias, and we may put some little filler in there as well. So I tell you what, won't you take the clippers if you'll stand up here, and I'm going to hand them to you, and you could kind of do your thing.
Okay. So they talk about flower arrangements. One of the flower farming courses I took, and it went into a whole class on market bouquets, is they talk about like the 5 key ingredients. So you've got like your focal flowers, your fillers, how to make a list here. So you got your spikes, your focals, your discs, your air, which kind of just usually it's like baby's breath, Queen Anne's lace, things that are real flowy.
Flowy, I like
the
that word.
Flowy. To me, it just makes it look more wildflower and not so quite put together. Yeah. So you always try to add all of those elements in. So
we're going to do a real simple one.
We're going to do simple. So zinnias are considered like a disc flower or a focal flower, depending on what time of year it is. And right now, since zinnias are
so I'm going to lay them right there, and I'm going to hand you some. Now you tell me which ones you want to red.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to mix the colors up a little bit here.
Expert on that one.
Uh-oh.
So we're going to mix some of the colors.
And we could do a whole video on how to cut zinnias, because that's another interesting subject there as well. But you see the long stems on them right there?
Yes.
There's a reason for that.
That's that giant orange right there. Yep. That's beautiful. If y'all can see that, that's beautiful. And then so now we just want to start adding in some greenery.
Oh, I'm still at the zinnias. I need to back up here. Yeah. So this is basil, which if you're not growing basil has a lot of different great things you can do with it. So we were just talking before the show how well the bees love the basil.
Yeah, see, I cut a lot of the side shoots off here because you just have to think that all that's got to stay hydrated, and you really just want like this top part for greenery. So if you cut some of this stuff off, it won't wilt so quickly on you.
Oh, really? Now, do you cut it off close to the stem as you can? Okay.
Mm-hmm. So I'm always trying to mix around my colors, the pinks and the oranges. And I usually just work around in a circle, twisting and turning as I go. If y'all can see that, some of these oranges are so pretty.
Yeah, oranges and yellows.
And this time of year, my season ended in July. We kind of finished up because we just had some big projects going on the farm. We were building 3 high tunnels, and those needed to go over where my fields were at, where we had our first sowings planted. And so we had to I just had to make an executive decision that we just had to stop and let the workers get in there and get these tunnels put together. So there's all the
Sometimes you got to pick your battles. That one's going to be too short.
Yes, and they're just... So normally, though, if I had planted my zinnias or planted for a fall, like going into our fall, we would have planted a lot of the jewel tone colors. Mm-hmm. But I love pink, so I will always grow a pink flower. I don't care if it's October.
Yeah, pinks always do well. These are red ones. Is that enough?
Yeah, so we're going to add, and then I brought a little bit of my flowers from what I had that reseeded. No, put that on the ground. Now we talk about our spikes. So we had some salvia, Victorian blue, which is really pretty. Anytime you can add a blue or a purple in there, it just really makes anything pop. So again, we're just going to work around on the sides.
Man, you're doing way better than what I would have done there already.
And then, so we got a spike there with our Victorian blue, and then we've also got some celosia. We got different colors. And also the celosia gives you the greenery as well with the leaves. So you've got some nice greenery there. And then this is called red hibiscus.
Yeah. So we grow a roselle.
I saw that on your website,
Yeah,
and
so
I was curious if it was similar.
It's not, it doesn't have quite the
Okay.
red color that does, but it would work.
So we're kind of working that around the outside.
I'm all about dual purpose. What if you got one that gives you a food source and also gives you a flower as well?
Yeah, that's like the basil.
Yep.
I mean, I love it. And so our little air ingredient, you know, and you can forage around. There's so much you can find around your home that you probably would never think about. I can't pronounce the scientific name, but bluebeard.
Bluebeard, yep.
So that's your air. See how it's just
Yep.
real flowy? So
Yep.
there's your air ingredient.
Air. So when I'm talking to my buddies, I can mention these things like air and fillers, things like that. And you think
Airs,
yeah,
filler.
yeah. So boys, I got to go
And
home and
just
do.
from your hedges there.
Yep. I got to do some air and fillers.
You gotta do some fillers.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can take just a simple focal flower of zinnias and turn it into something so sweet.
So we want to trim this off at a certain. So you got them all. So you work from the top down. So then we're gonna trim everything off at the bottom.
Yeah, you're gonna make an even cut.
You want me to do that, or we can do it right
Normally,
here?
what I do, like if I'm having to do a base arrangement, I kind of feel like where I want that to go,
Okay.
and so I kind of know. I
So right here, baby. Okay. Don't cut nothing. All right. Wow, and just like that.
And then it's like that.
That's so much better than what I would have done.
I feel I'm very comfortable making like these types of arrangements versus like the more structured floral arrangements. And then of course you can always go back in and, you know, and play with it and add some things on the side.
Yeah.
If you feel like you got a hole somewhere.
So all of that right there, those zinnias in there, is a variety that we're selling called California Giant. So the Binary Giant mix has been a little bit on short supply this year.
You know what? I was amazed when I had to put my seed order together in just for my cool flowers.
Yep.
How many things were? Sorry, didn't do that over. How many seeds were back ordered?
So the Binary Giant is, now they tell us around January they're going to be
Right.
available again. So what?
And that's okay because they're a warm season, and most people don't start those till. And I start those seeds usually the end of February, very early March.
Right. So we got this variety here that we use there in that bouquet called the California Giants mix right here. And we don't sell these in seed packs, and the reason is this is a very economical variety to use here. So if you're planting in the vegetable garden and you're planting you a big area there for zinnias, this is a great variety here to use because you can buy a quarter pound of this
Yeah.
for $12.99.
I mean, zinnias are your go-to. Anybody who wants to, or you're just dabbling into flowers, zinnias are the way to go.
Yeah, and this is a great variety right here. Now, if you're a flower farmer,
Right.
I would definitely tell you go with the Binary Giant mix, hands down. But it is a lot more expensive than this. If you're wanting to grow some for your own use, or you just want a big area to plant you some zinnias, this is a great choice right here for $12.99. And there is a lot of zinnia seeds in this right here.
Yes.
So you can plant these, get them a little thick, it's okay. Or you could actually probably broadcast them. Now I like to plant mine in rows out there. I got a patch going there now that these came out of. So there you have it, folks. The California Giants mix. We'll put a link below to this right here, as well as the Binary Giant Yellow Zinnia.
I'm excited they are carrying that
Yeah,
color.
yep. The Veneries do really well for us. We just hope that
Yes.
supplies seem to get a little bit better this year.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, okay, what if somebody wanted to make a little extra income off the farm, off the homestead, or, and we hear this all the time, what if they have teenage kids or middle-aged kids and they want something they can do on the farm to make a little extra money?
Right.
I personally think flower farming is a great way to do that, either to supplement or get your kids introduced to an agricultural product so they can understand business and they can also grow something and be fun. I think it's a great way to do that.
Yes. Definitely to get started, like we just talked about, the zinnias are, the seed it's very inexpensive seed, and the germination rate is wonderful on it. It produces abundance of flowers. So that one's definitely a go-to.
Zinnia's number one.
Zinnia's number
They
one.
should be growing.
And sunflowers.
And sunnies is number two.
Sunnies may be they call it a one-hit wonder. One flower, one stalk. There are some branching varieties I've grown over the years, but to me, for the space that it takes up, I can plant just as many single stems in the amount of space that I need for a giant or a branching sunflower. And typically those have really smaller heads as well.
They do.
So the single cut varieties, and there's so many out there now, so many colors you can, and that's what makes fun for the kids, is seeing all the different colors. But normally, when you sell those at a market, you can get anywhere from 75 cents to $1.25 a stem.
Per stem.
Per stem.
Yes.
Yes. So even doing a small patch, or if you've got a larger, acreage, you could even do a U-cut event. A lot of people I've noticed have started doing those where they've got, even just a little quarter acre where they'll plant a field and then open it up for a day or two and just have a U-pick event. Those are really popular, and kids love to come out and do those. Kids love to cut flowers.
Yep.
They just love it. So
Yep.
you always have to plant, you always have to, I always joke when we had we've got our raised beds, so I'd always let the kids have their own box, because I'm particular about what's in my box and how things are cut and, done. But in their box, they can do whatever they want. I would give them direction, but I didn't say, oh, no, don't cut that far down, or, don't cut that yet. I would let them, that was their box to explore. And so that's really where farming, to me, is really so special.
So we got zinnias, we got sunflowers. Would you stick with those two, or would you venture off? Maybe it was... Let's stick with what people they could do in the summertime, because kids have more time, or people generally have more time in the summertime because the days are longer. We just have more time.
So the basils you just showed, that one that was just like a regular eating. I'm not sure what brand, or there's so many basils, but in cut flower production, some of the few that we use most often, and I don't think I cut any in my bucket, but we use the lemon basil because it has a really good sturdy stem, which that one has a great stem as well. But it has that smell, it has that lemon smell. And so when you put a bouquet together with zinnias and you put that little bit of lemon basil, and it's just that they smell it and it's like their senses, and it's just wonderful. Cinnamon basil is another one that has like a reddish burgundy leaf that's really pretty. So definitely play around with some of the herbs. I've seen rosemary and different mountain mint. It's one I'm growing this year that I'm going to be... Spearmint. I mean, so definitely think outside of the boxes, just not only flowers and vegetables, but herbs, because those are wonderful additions to any type of flower bouquet. And to your kitchen, to your home garden that you can utilize in your kitchen.
And most of those herbs are real easy to grow and forgiving.
They are.
Yeah.
They're forgiving.
Yeah.
And my goodness, you plant anything with any mint family, and you better put it in a box.
You better get out of the way.
It's going to take over.
Yeah.
Celosia is another one that's a little bit harder to germinate, but they are very heat tolerant, and they come in all different shapes and colors, and those are a lot of fun to grow.
My favorite is probably the coxcomb.
Yes.
Those really make a splash anywhere you want to do. And you talk about heat tolerant and easy to grow. Those are nice.
Those are champs. Those always look like little mini brains to me.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm more of the plume,
Yep.
the plume types like this. You know, they're just. I think this is flamingo feather. So I'm more of a plume type celosia than the coxcomb, but
Yeah, here's a nice red one.
yes. So, but they're beautiful. Like I said, they add the texture, they add the color.
And
So
they're
those are a
again
lot of
easy to
fun.
grow.
They're easy. I mean, like I said, they can be tricky to germinate, but you know, once you get the hang of that, once they go in the ground, they are low maintenance. There's not a lot of disease pressure on them. Mostly with those, it's some bugs you have to deal with, but disease-wise, they're very, very good.
Yeah, that leads me to something else. You know, growing flowers, if you're looking at something to bring your kids into or to do to make a little extra money, you know, treating with pesticides is just about something you don't have to do with flowers.
No.
Very seldom do I have to treat any of my flowers with an insecticide or fungicide.
Well, you say that, but my kids, they like the bugs.
Yeah.
So they love finding the spiders.
Well, I was talking about from a pest
From a
standpoint.
pest,
Yeah.
but you know, you're talking about the bugs and things like that. So we don't spray on our farm. We treat as organically as possible with everything. And I even had to call my best friend on the way here. I'll tell you a quick story. Since we don't treat in anything, like I had that bucket of flowers in my back seat. I'm driving on the way here, and next thing I know, there's a spot. I could feel the web come down my face. And one of the green lynx spiders had crawled up onto the. Which
But
luckily,
you didn't panic, did you?
I don't really have a fear of spiders.
Yeah.
I just seen him come down my face, and I was like, "Okay, you got to go."
Yeah. Sometimes we'll cut stones out of the garden and we get them inside and we'll see there's a few bugs there. Just simply carry them outside and shake them off.
It's
and
usually mine is usually always spiders.
Yeah.
So,
The spiders are a good
but
one
they're
because
good. So I was
they eat the
gonna say,
pests.
they're good.
Yep.
They're fine.
So what would you recommend as far as what they need to get started? You know, the biggest thing with flower farming, if you're starting on a small level, the biggest thing you need is knowledge.
And that's like research. You've got to spend some time, and with the internet these days, there's so much. Honestly, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming.
Or you can get some slanted information.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of great flower farmers who've been around and been in the business. I mentioned Lisa Ziegler before, her book Cool Flowers. If you're wanting to talk about hardy annuals, this is the go-to book right there. But there are so many knowledgeable flower farmers, and find those that have been doing it a long time. Because you just gain so much knowledge, because you learn something every year that you're growing and every season that you're growing. So when you can partner up and read information from other farmers that have been doing it for years, you're already so far ahead when you get started. You don't have to make those mistakes if you can read and just kind of learn. Now, you're going to make some mistakes. You're going to kill some things.
Right.
That's just all part of farming. So we've already got a bug right here.
But you know, really and truly, all you need, you could go to the Home Depot one day and rent a walk-behind tiller. As far as the equipment you need is minimal to get started.
To get started is minimal.
Yeah.
Really, it's just the knowledge of like just learning how to grow things, like how to start seeds, what what type of nutrients do they need, what the watering and things like that. But it's real. It's not that hard.
No,
It's
no,
not
it
that
just takes a
hard.
little patience
It just-
and willing to learn.
Honestly, if anything, it teaches me patience,
Yeah.
because we're in a instant gratification world. We
Right.
like things done. Like starting seeds this week, we started them Thursday. I was already in the grow room, like
Looking.
like why haven't you? I'm like,
I
Jennifer,
do the same
it
thing.
says 7 to 14 days. Just chill out.
Yep.
Let them do their thing. So if anything, farming teaches patience.
Yep.
Teaches patience.
So what about actually selling the product? You know, there's different ways that you could sell your product. You could do farmers markets. You could do what y'all call pop-up markets.
Pop up.
Or you could do subscriptions.
Yeah. There's tons of different ways to sell your product. And honestly, it boils down to you as an individual and your time. Farmers markets are pretty much every Saturday. Not all day, but normally you have to get there and start setting up at 7 a.m. Most of them end around 1 or 2. Then you've got to break down. You've got to carry everything back home, wash all the buckets, put everything back up. So it's a full Saturday. So if if you're a mom with kids that are in sports and have games on Saturdays, and that's just the season that you're in right now, as far as being a parent, that might not be the best thing for you to do right now as a farmer's market. That's where they call them on-farm or pop-up markets that you can have at your home. If you have, live in an area that would support that, then that's great, because then you can kind of do some things on your own time. You can do like a Sunday evening. I did some Sundays this past season, and those were some of my best days, Sunday afternoon. I thought, wow, okay, Sundays are great. And for me, it allowed me to do more cutting, because I do work another full-time job off the farm. So when you do markets, you've got to think it's not just market day. You've got to spend days ahead of time getting things prepped, and getting your flowers cut, and getting your materials ready. So really, it depends. You really have to look at your time. What is your family? What's going on within your family? When you have small kids versus when you have older kids. Mine are older now, so guess what? Guess who gets to wash the buckets when we're done with the market? That's the 11 and the 13-year-old. That's part of their chores. It's time to wash buckets. And yes, they complain about it.
But they do it.
But they do it. My 13-year-old was great this year at helping me at the market. She's really good in math. So guess who was taking money? And I showed her how to use the credit card machine. So
that's just a wonderful way to explain to them how real world works.
And when we grew up, my parents and my grandpa, we had farmers markets growing up. And I remember my dad and my grandpa, you were not allowed to put the change, like the cash tender, into a register. You had to count change back, which is a lost art. So I was teaching, my daughter, no, we're not getting our phone out and getting a calculator. You're going to count the change back. Somebody gives you a 20 or, whatever, we're going to count the money back.
Yeah.
So it's great skills.
Yeah.
They've helped me, they've held flashlights at night where I've had to cut flowers. But like I said, they're CSAs, or I think you called them a subscription.
So you would do this, explain, say you had doctor's offices or you had businesses in towns that you could sell them this system, so you replace their flowers on a weekly basis. Even homeowners, so that you gave them, every so often you got a new bouquet of flowers.
Yeah, that's really become popular now with flower farmers, is the CSA, or the community supported agriculture, which came really from the vegetable farmer side. But essentially what you would do is you would set up depending on where you live, because some growing seasons are short and some are very long, you can set up a 6-week, 8-week, 10-week CSA, a subscription, where that customer would buy a subscription. You would supply them for flowers, let's just say for 8 weeks. And every week, you would have to do a delivery where you would drop it off on their front door. Or if you had a focal point, like within a community, that you could set something up where you could drop off the flowers here for Sally. These are her flowers. So there's different ways. Those always scared me in the beginning, because people pay for that up front.
So you're committing.
So you're committing.
Yeah.
And so that always made me nervous, especially starting out, until I really got a handle on what flowers were going to be growing and blooming in this season, like at this time point. If I start my subscription on April 1st, I better have flowers that are blooming April 1st. So it took me a couple years, taking notes and documenting, okay, if I planted this flower on this date and it bloomed on this date. This flower got planted here, it bloomed on here. And we take a ton of pictures. I take a ton of pictures on the farm, walking around, just kind of like it's my library, so I can go back and say, when did that first ranunculus bloom last year? So I know, okay, about February 3rd, I was snapping pictures of my first ranunculus. So the subscriptions are great because you get that income up front, because normally, a farmer doesn't make money until you sell your product. This way you get the product or the money up front, and that's able to give you income so you can purchase more material, seeds and things like that. But again, you got to deliver.
Right.
So
yeah, and with
first time out, it made me a little nervous to do
But you got that recurring revenue, which I'm a big fan of. So
right.
It comes back and over again.
Right.
With any of those systems that we mentioned there, social media, whether it be Instagram or Facebook, is a huge important driver of the business itself.
Right.
And we're afforded that in a good way now. We can use those tools to do that, just like your pop-up markets that you do on the weekend. You drive those with your social media.
Yeah, you always try to be consistent on the days you're doing it. So I always tried, like in the early spring, we had so many ranunculus and snapdragons that were the fields were just bursting in color. So we needed one market a week, wasn't going to move all the flowers I had coming in. So I tried to do a Thursday and a Saturday. I know a lot of farmers, they'll try to do, like, if they do a subscription service and they do a market, they do their subscriptions like in the early part of the week.
That would make sense.
And then you do your, because most markets are on the weekend. So you kind of can break it up if you've got a lot of flowers to move. So it was nice when we had an abundance coming in early spring, which springtime, early spring through early summer is like, it's just amazing. There's just flowers and vegetables. I mean, everything's just like,
and everybody's in the mood.
Everybody's happy. They're coming off of winter. Everybody's excited. We got sunshine. We've got color. We've got a little warmth. And so those are your busiest times. And so you really want to think ahead in the fall, like what we're doing now, making spreadsheets and making sure so we can take advantage. Because a flower takes 90 to 120 days. So you can't wake up March and be like, oh, we need to start nope. You've missed your window. There's definitely a lot of planning.
What would you say the don'ts or what not to do? Give me an idea of some mistakes that you've made that you would give advice to people that wants to dabble into this, what not to do.
Okay, so first of all, I would say don't try to get too big too fast, especially if you've never grown anything, because everybody has different skill sets and things like that. So if you've never grown anything, start small, and then of course as you learn and as you grow as a farmer, it's not so intimidating. I started with, I had my raised bed gardens, which are 14 raised beds, and then I had two 60 by 70 foot plots, and then by the midsummer I had tilled up another plot because I felt pretty good about what I was doing. I felt more confident about it. I'm like, I can do this. I can grow. I can grow this flower. So I added another plot. And then this past year, we added a fourth plot. And this year, right now we're in the middle of building 3 high tunnels. So I've every year just kept growing. So I say, don't try to start and do everything at one time. Really sit back and think about what what your family and your lifestyle will allow you to do, and then kind of go from there. But on the other flip side, don't get so intimidated that you just don't start anything, because I have a habit sometimes too. If you look at the big picture too much, it just seems overwhelming, and then you kind of get stuck. So you kind of just have to start. You just got to start somewhere, and then just one more step, and one more step.
And don't give your product away.
Yes, and I will say that's a lot of, and if you get into like the flower farming forums on social media, they will talk about people who devalue because it's just a flower, so I'm just going to charge that. So no, that's a lot of work that goes into growing that zinnia. I mean, that's a lot of, you got to start the seeds. All the materials you have to buy, the soil, germination mix, the trays. It's a lot of cost that goes into growing that one flower.
Right, and there is value there.
And there's value there, and I think for me, one of the hardest things I've had to value is my time, because like I don't factor in sometimes the amount of time I spend in the garden. But if I was getting paid, an hourly wage to be in that garden, I've just spent 40 hours this week. So,
that's odd when you look at how much time
when you look how much time you actually, I've been, like I said, my husband has been on our golf cart with the strobe light on at night so I could cut flowers for a market the next day. So, you do things like that. So, yes, I would just say make sure you're looking at the amount of time you're spending, because as farmers, and sometimes we just love to do it. Like, it's just a passion. So we don't think about that is actual work. Those are work hours, and when you are in that farm or at that farm working, you're in that field working, that's also time you're not with your family.
Right.
So,
or if you make it a family affair, it could
you can. But when you got young teenagers,
it can be stressful.
Sometimes I joke because my mama, because we grew up where you just didn't stay inside and watch TV. You just worked outside. But my mom will come over some days and I'll be out there cutting flowers, and she's like, "Where's your kids? Why are they here?" I'm like, "Mom, I want the peace and quiet." Like, so sometimes
it's your getaway. Yeah.
Sometimes it's my escape is to the garden, or especially like I say, I work away from home too. So after being at a desk all day and dealing with that, I like to just come home and work in the garden.
Your therapy.
That's my therapy. I don't really want my 11 and 13-year-old who likes to just I'm like, I need my quiet time. But
Yeah.
it is fun, and they do. I mean, I know looking back how much. Like when my grandpa would make us go pick up pecans and all that, how much I just dreaded it and I hated it and I swore I'd never do it. If I ever got big enough, I would never do it. And then last year I was out there just happily picking them up. So I know when the kids are out there with me and they're groaning and complaining and they're whining and I just tell them to suck it up, you're going to do it. I know eventually one day, it might be 20 years from now.
One day.
They will look back
Yeah.
and say, that was real fun. You
Yeah.
know, we had a lot of fun out there with Mom cutting flour. You know, my 11-year-old boy's like, it's a flower. Because I'll make him
Yeah.
cut. Nothing gets better traction on Instagram than a little boy holding flowers. And so
Yep.
I would make Peyton like be my little model. And oh my gosh, he would get so mad at me. And we'd have to take so many pictures because he would just like, and I'm like, smile.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm just, boy.
Yeah. Wasn't nothing he wanted his buddies to see.
No. But I know one day he'll look back
Yep.
and think that
So
was
we
a lot
got
of fun.
it. There you go, folks. It gives
Yeah.
you an
Sorry, I
idea
rattled a
of
lot
what
there.
you could do, what you could do to
Yeah.
involve your family, your kids, or if you just want to make some extra money on the homestead during those. You know, I would recommend to make it to start with just a summer thing. Start with your
Yes.
zinnias, your sunflowers, some of the herbs we talked about. Get involved in it. Find what works for you. The different business models there, because it's going to be according to your location. You know, if you got a big farmer's market next to you, it may work. If you're in a very rural area,
Right.
something else may work. Find what works for you, but it's a great opportunity to get your kids involved. Let them make a little extra money. Let them enjoy it. Let them understand business a little bit, how things work. And I think it would be a great strategy for that.
Oh, yeah.
So we normally do a little what we call corny joke of the week.
Okay.
This week I got a riddle. How about that? But I'm
riddle.
going to let you guess the riddle. So what does everyone have on their face? Tulips.
Got one for you.
You know,
I wrote, what did the big flower say to the little flower?
whew, I don't know.
Hey, bud.
That's a good one as well. So there you go, folks. You got a riddle and a joke that you can use at your family get-together at the family dinner table this week. So great to have you, Jennifer. Thank you for the
Thank
insight
you.
there. I think people can use that information there. Maybe give them some ideas of what they can do on the homestead, on the farm.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's so many things that you could do on your. I mean, that's kind of what we started. Is we just created our own little homestead there. You know, we started growing our own little vegetables and added some flowers, and then realized,
Boom.
hey, flower farming is a thing, and we could make some money on this. So it's kind of where I started from
So
there.
you make some money and you brighten people's day also.
right.
Yep. It's
And you put that money back into the farm
Yep.
and make it bigger.
Doesn't get any better than that.
That's right.
All right. Well, thank y'all folks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. Now it's time to get out there and get dirty.